Greetings, friends. It's Joe Atwell and the intrepid researcher Jan Irvin. Hello, Jan. How are you?
Good, Joe. How are you doing tonight?
Just another perfect day here in the insane asylum. I, the recent events are just so hard to believe that it's actually affecting my mood. Normally, I don't let this happen, but this whole business with Syria is just so it has really underlined the need to produce a new media, because obviously the media in the United States has been complicit in not giving the public good information about the situation in Syria, and it's led to this acceptance of foreign policy that's crazy. And the media has, as you know, worked to put people into a dream, basically. That has been what has been done to us, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, traditionally I would say that the media and the intelligence community are pretty inseparable. And, that was something that dawned on me when I was at Princeton in February that I called you and discussed with you about that not only was it the movies and film stars, it was the poets and, the radio, the television, all of these movie stars. If you're going to get big, you need to sell out essentially. It's like Anderson Cooper on CNN. What's his background? He was a CIA agent. He did his graduation at Langley, and he's like, Vanderbilt family heir or something like that.
Right. I mean, he's just someone who is more concretely outed. I think if you go into the background of almost any of these individuals who are media presenters in the United States and in Europe, you'll find that there are connections, at the end of it all, to military intelligence. And all of this, in fact, is related to a long-standing program that is actually described in the Shakespearean literature. Um, Shakespeare's plays are very cryptic. The actual sort of correct interpretive framework hasn't been seen by the public. I wrote a book called Shakespeare's Secret Messiah to try to bring this out. And it's very interesting that, my research often blends into Jan's, even though we don't start at the same point. An example of this was where I was researching modern Christianity and came across A Course in Miracles, which turned out to be produced by MK Ultra employees. Jan was, in the meantime, researching the origins of the psychedelic movement in the United States, and found that Gordon Wasson had actually been also a member of this organization, MK Ultra, and so in putting facts together, we actually had a clear vision. I think that's a true statement, Jan. I think both of
Well,
us.
and not just in that one example. You were researching ancient mind control, and I was researching
Right.
modern mind control. And we looked at it and we went, "Oh, it's the same thing."
Right. And so this was very useful, and we have information that's valuable for the public. And I wanted to reference an article I wrote called Shakespeare's Apocalyptic Brave New World, because
I'm gonna put that on screen, Joe.
yeah, please do. And that article explains the expression "Brave New World" as Shakespeare, or the author of the Shakespearean literature, created, and then was reused by Aldous Huxley in his novel. And you know, Huxley's participation in MK Ultra has really not been understood until Jan's research. And Jan also wrote a paper that we'll be referencing tonight, um, showing just beyond any kind of uh, possible doubt that Huxley was participating in MK Ultra, and in fact, he was orchestrating quite a bit of it. And so it then becomes very, you can see that there's actually a fusion between the uh, understanding of the original expression that Shakespeare created, um, and uh, the research that John's done. And so um, the the play Brave New World was actually based upon um, the um, the passage in Isaiah, Isaiah 29 through 35, and this is, very, very well known, understood by scholars, though it's not something that is often discussed. Uh, so the in the article that I wrote, which I'm trying to gain control over, Jan is somehow I
Oh, do you need me to move it from the screen
yeah,
there?
I just want to be able to
Sure.
reference it. So
Go ahead.
Leonard, I'm just gonna do a very, very quick synopsis, because I want to actually get more into the meaning in the present day. But this is a piece of analysis that I would hope everyone would read, because it's free. It's not something. It's like Jan's research paper. It's not something we're asking people to pay us for, but it's something people need to be aware of, because The Tempest is the play that the expression Brave New World came out of. It has a character who operates as kind of a Tinkerbell, something like a sprite that just dances around. Um, and it's the story of this terrible storm, which is in fact a magic creation, a dream. And then the play goes on and has a number of dreams that it describes, all of these dreams that are taking place. Um, Now, the character Ariel and the actual tempest, the storm, are from Isaiah 29, and Isaiah 29 describes the character Ariel, and in that Old Testament passage, Ariel is described basically as a kind of spirit of the of Jerusalem, of the Jewish people who
Yeah,
were.
and I think, just to interrupt you, I think Dr. Hans Utter and I just discussed Ariel in our 7-part series as, one of these dark spirits that also comes up in the children's cartoons and in other places as well.
Exactly right, and I will show that these understandings are not circumstance. There is a group. It has complete control over our media, and it is completely aware of the actual occulted meaning of Shakespeare. Um, what I do in the article is I show that it isn't just the storm and the character Ariel that Shakespeare has taken, but in fact, the whole play, The Tempest, this long process of narration, is expanding upon the story that is found in Isaiah, which goes on to an apocalypse of the Gentiles, and then describes a kind of perfect world, post apocalypse, where the spirit of the Jewish people has dominion. And so I point out in the that there is this peculiar uh, director of Shakespearean movies named Julie Taymor, and she produced two films. One is The Tempest, and one is Titus Andronicus. And Titus Andronicus is another heavily occulted play. It's actually a manifestation of the analysis of the Gospels that I do in Caesar's Messiah, where I show that the Gospels are basically a cannibal joke, and they are all concerning, basically, are predicting this character Titus Flavius, who comes at the end of this war between the Jews and the Gentiles, and fulfills all of the prophecies that the character Jesus Christ makes. Won't go into this complicated analysis here, but Julie Taymor changes the end of Titus Andronicus. And she did so in a way, and I mentioned this in my book, Shakespeare's Secret Messiah, that shows she absolutely understood the occulted meaning. The change that she has is, and I'm not going to describe it, but people who look at the book, or you can ask me, an email. It's just we got too much material to cover to go into stuff like this. But it shows that she understood it. Now, she also, when she did The Tempest, she changes the character of Prospero, who is sort of the organizer of all of the events, to a woman. And I think this is also a revelation concerning Tamor's recognition of the real meaning of the Shakespearean literature. Because at the end of the play, Prospero looks at the audience, and basically people have wondered if this isn't just Shakespeare's, basically the epilogue to all his writing, because he talks to the audience and he says, I'm going to need you to buy into my story. I need you to, for me to succeed, you have to believe in this dream I've created. It has to be real to you. And in the play The Tempest, a character says, there is this brave new world that with creatures in it, and it's going to be this wonderful thing to experience. And in the context I show, it's completely clear that this is the post-apocalyptic world that Isaiah 29 describes. In other words, and this is not a difficult analytic concept. It's basically just that the author of The Tempest has simply expanded on Isaiah and has reached the ending. And so now you have the concept Brave New World in the context of Isaiah, in the context of Isaiah's apocalypse. And moreover, Isaiah 29 describes a dream that the Gentiles will be placed into. And this is the central point. Isaiah 29 describes a dream that then the Shakespearean author replicates in the play The Tempest over and over again. Actually takes, and I show he takes some of the actual examples of the dream that the Gentiles are going to be placed into, and then uses it as the basis of the play. So first of all, one of the things in Shakespeare's Secret Messiah shows that the Shakespearean literature is a Jewish response. It is pretending to be Gentile literature, but in fact, it comes from a group that of Moranos, of cryptic or hidden Jews that knew the real meaning of the Shakespeare of the Gospels, and then produced this literature as basically a way to talk about themselves and to mock the Gospels in the same way the Gospels mock the Jewish scripture. So anyway, now this statement, Brave New World from The Tempest, was then reused by Huxley. And in the next book that I'll be coming up with, which is called The Secret Language of the Oligarchs, I'll show that Huxley knows perfectly well the occulted meaning of Shakespeare. This is why he's using it. He's using it because what Huxley is describing in his book is in fact his vision for the future and his vision of the project that he's working on. And this is where Jan's extraordinary research comes in, because now we can unify these two understandings, that Huxley's understanding of this brave new world and the way that Shakespeare represented it is in fact what the MK Ultra organizers were beginning to create, and have basically gone on and used the media to place us all in this dream. Wouldn't you say so, Jan?
Yeah, I would say so. And I want to add that, and I'm going to pull up the brain database here and cover some of this just to show people what I'm talking about here. But the in the brain database, and let me just pull that over here, and under the Brave New World, of course, see, the Brave New World, as you mentioned last week, was also influenced by Rudyard Kipling and his poem. And which one was that? Gods of the Copybook Heading here.
Gods of the Copybook Heading, which describe another apocalypse. The
Right.
statement is when men are paid for existing. In other words, this is the welfare state, where the government has taken control of the lives of individuals.
Right.
When men are paid for existing, and the brave new world begins, and this is Kipling's, direct understanding of the real meaning of Shakespeare, then the gods of the copybook heading, which are the gods of the Old Testament, will return with slaughter and mayhem. So he's
And
I'm sorry.
okay, well, I just want to add here. So, from the Brave New World, it goes into William Sargent's book, Battle for the Mind.
Right.
And then we see Aldous Huxley tied to William Sargent, and William Sargent was also part of Project MK Ultra, and that's been long verified. I don't know what sub-project he was a part of, but he was working on this Ultimate Revolution as well. And then his book, his Battle for the Mind idea becomes the basis of this fourth world neo-feudalism, dark age, archaic revival, postmodernist idea promoted by the CIA, the Tavistock Institute, etc. So all of these things pour into this. In the Battle for the Mind, we can see, several dozens of the methods that they're using against the population as a whole. And when you look at this stuff as one thing, you don't see it. You have to see it as many different things. It's a multi-pronged attack. So we have dumbing us down in compulsory education schools. We have the neo-shamanism and A Course in Miracles, alien abduction, ancient abductions, assassins and serial killers, birth control, and of course, the pill is a term that Aldous Huxley came up with. He coined that term.
Well, feminism is
well, that's up there too. We have the whole December 2012 New Age movement and the destruction of the family, the environmental movement, and Agenda 21, and all of these different things: feminism, fluoride, Gaia hypothesis, geoengineering, global warming fraud, GMO foods, gun control, homosexuality. All of this stuff plays into this degradation of society. But if we see it as the one thing, we don't see it. Now, one thing that's important to point out is that one of Huxley's biggest influences was a guy by the name of Emanuel Swedenborg, and that's this guy here. And Emanuel Swedenborg is very famous because he was a spy for the King of Sweden in the 17th century, or maybe 18th century. And so what I want to do is I'm going to stop the share screen here. But this guy is very important because he is basically the fountainhead. And above him, you could say someone like Hassani Sabah would go further. But this guy even created his own cult, or actually he didn't create it, but it's founded after him in Brenathan, Pennsylvania, known as the Swedenborgians. And he influenced Carl Gustav Jung and Dr. Oz. And he wrote books like Secret Age, or there are books out on him, which I'm going to show in just a second. Secret Agent on Earth and in Heaven. But he wrote Heaven and Hell, which Huxley also wrote a version of. He influenced Immanuel Kant, who, of course, then influenced the whole fraudulent quantum physics thing. He influenced people like Johnny Appleseed and the whole New Age movement, Ralph Waldo Emerson, William Blake, and William James. William James goes on to head the Harvard University Department of Psychology, and then that becomes one of the key places where MK Ultra took off. And then we have, Dr. Henry A. Murray in that department, and Timothy Leary worked under Murray, as did Dr. Thomas Chiu and Dr. Richard Price, who helped co-found the Esalen Institute. And victims of these people in the same department were guys such as the infamous Unabomber, Dr. Ted Kaczynski, who was actually victimized by the MK Ultra group, and he tried to blow them all to smithereens. Now, he probably should have found a better way to expose them, but that was how Ted Kaczynski exposed them. So
the problem is that he was crazy.
They really messed him up, and I'm not sure that he was crazy. To an extent, the issue is his chosen path to expose them and to stop these MK Ultra and CIA psychopaths. Now, one thing that the media doesn't talk about is that most of the people that he targeted were associated with MK Ultra and the Stanford Research Institute, et cetera, who were a part of MK Ultra and doing this program. So that's fairly omitted. But let me just to show the audience this book here. And thanks to Steve for donating this book. This is a book by Marcia Keith Schuckard called Emanuel Swedenborg, Secret Agent on Earth and in Heaven, Jacobites, Jews, Freemasons in Early Modern Sweden. And this book is important because what it does is it shows that all of this that we've been looking at, and, Joe's doing all of this different uncoding of the Bible. And then I, through my work through ethnomycology and ethnobotany, was looking at all of this different steganography, which is looking at the hidden meanings and images. And I was looking at Christian perspective from images in John Allegro's work. Joe also started from John Allegro's work, interestingly, and we were completely separate in doing that. And then he came to his conclusions with the Old Testament and Shakespeare and all of that. So this book really shows, and again, thanks Steve for sending it. And this is not a cheap book, by the way. It's by Brill Publishers. Its suggested retail price is $400. And we were able to get a copy off of Amazon for $256. So thank you, Steve, for donating that. And what it shows, though, is that all of these different allegorical stories are actually encryption. It's cryptography. It's how they embedded their different stories and things. And so then that sort of bleeds over into my work in Spies and Academic Clothing, because we can see how they've taken this. And I recently did a show with Dr. Hans Utter exposing the whole fraud behind the War of the Worlds and Orson Welles and H.G. Wells. And ironically, of course, H.G. Wells taught Aldous Huxley and was Thomas Henry Huxley's student. But so the connection here with all of this is that it blends into how, and and it's a very long article. I'm sorry, it's not a quick synopsis that I can give, but essentially what is done behind the scenes is that there are cells that are created with, say, 3 or 4 agents or participants, cyanine, etc., whatever you want to call them. And these people behind the scenes agree with the storyline that they're going to sell the audience. So you can have, say, 4 academics. And in my article, I expose a number of them. I've exposed Gordon Wasson, the so-called discoverer of magic mushrooms, working in collusion with Professor Carl Ruck at Boston University, who's the one who created the word entheogen. And they were working with guys like Jonathan Ott and Professor Peter T. Fierst, who recently passed away. And Peter T. Fierst is one of the guys who misled our Joe's and my friend, Professor Jay Fikes, research
John, I just
committee.
want to mention Fikes because this is really a good way to underline what you're saying. Fikes exposed Carlos Castaneda as a
Exactly.
Government, right? And he was there. Castaneda was there basically to promote the shaman culture, to debase the people that he could influence. And Fikes, who is an anthropology professor, actually had done the research with these Native American.
He lived with them, right?
Lived with them, and he knew that Castaneda was fake. He then also knew that the anthropology professors, and he cites 2 of them, that were supporting Castaneda's work,
right? And so
were also fake.
Right.
And so
this is that cell, though. That
this is what Jan means by a cell: is that one person creates a fictional narrative, and then other academics who are part of the plot then give it credence, cite it, use it as references in their work, and then the cluster of them are very hard to knock because they form kind of an intimidating group of
Right.
academics.
And then so what you have essentially, so the other two academics in the case of Carlos Castaneda, and of course he's the one who promoted the whole Yaqui Indian neo-shamanic fraud, and he was a doctor, graduated from UCLA. UCLA was likely behind all of this, but we do know that Professor Peter T. Fierst, who died this year, and then also Dr. Barbara Meyerhoff, who died, a couple of decades ago, were also a part of this. And then what happens is these cells will cross-site each other to further
Right.
bury the fraud.
It
So
branches out
what
into
you
a larger
so
plot.
what I want to do here though is I want to read a quote here from President Bill Clinton's professor at Georgetown University, Carol Quigley, and he explains this in a similar but political scale. And he says, by the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was an autonomous power, and the influence of each was increased through a process of mutual reinforcement. Unim-
Unanimity.
Thank you. Among the various branches was believed by the outside world to be the result of the influence of a single truth, while really it was the result of the existence of a single group. And of course, again, multiple groups citing each other.
Right.
Thus, a statesman, a member of the group, announces a policy. About the same time, the Royal Institute of International Affairs publishes a study on the subject, and an Oxford Don, a fellow of All Souls and a member of the group, also publishes a volume on the subject, probably through a publishing house like G. Bell and Sons or Farber and Farber, allied to the group. And the statesman's policy is subjected to critical analysis and final approval in, in a leader in the Times, while the two books are reviewed in a single review in the Times Literary Supplement, which of course is in the London Times. Both the leader and the review are anonymous, but are written by members of the group.
Right. And so
And
this is how.
finally, hold on. And finally, at about the same time, an anonymous article in the roundtable strongly advocates the same policy. The cumulative effect of such tactics is this: even if each tactical move influences only a small number of important people, is bound to be great.
Sure, and this is how they can insert into culture preposterous concepts like Castaneda or
Or quantum physics, for that
the
matter.
Middle East foreign policy. And this is really why I would hope people spend time with the brain database that Jan has created. And I would just, as an example of the power of it, and how it can be used in the way that we're using it in this article, is the band The Grateful Dead. Because when you look at the brain database, what you'll see is that these members have direct connections into MK Ultra employment, the Bohemian Grove, but then it also shows that, wait a second, the Tavistock Institute produced The Manager. And then beyond this, the funding for their first album then comes from Peggy Hitchcock.
Peggy Millen Hitchcock, who is the brother of Billy Hitchcock.
And so now none of these strands in and of themselves, I mean, for example, Osley, who was their sound person who supposedly created the LSD, which is of course absurd, but this was the claim. He had, if you look into his life, then you'll see St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which takes you right back to MK Ultra. And so when you look at the entanglements, the direct connections that all of them have into this world of MK Ultra, it becomes overwhelming. Jan earlier mentioned when you just see the one thing, the one connection, it is very difficult from that to create a defensible thesis, something that you can take to your friends and say, look, we've got a real problem. There is an infestation of our culture, and it is being done to destroy us, to wipe us out. But when you look at all of the strands and how they connect, then suddenly it's overwhelming. Suddenly it's absolutely clear. There is no way that this kind of series of connections could exist accidentally. There is simply no way. And so that's how the brain database enables someone to come into it and see the reality from these connections. The connections and how they spread out are how someone can really come to understand just how complete the dream that they are living in has been built. Just how far flung all of the fictional concepts that are basically damaging you, making a person mentally feeble, and then, of course, into the destruction of the body that is going on. I mean, really, when you look through the brain database, what you're seeing is an enormous organization that has oath and secrecy at some level, and probably just intimidation and money as it goes lower. But it is really in control of culture, the government. They are unified, and we are now, unfortunately, moving, in the Syrian situation, to this very dangerous um, uh, conflict with Russia, and the stories that are being told are completely fictional. It's another
Absolutely. Now
of the
let me just add a little note here. You mentioned Augustus Osley Bear Stanley at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Now, St. Elizabeth's is important because that's where Dr. Werner Overholzer held the famous poet Ezra Pound for 12 years and drugged him for apparently speaking out about all of this in the 1930s on Italian radio. And so it was none other. And I, of course, and I read the letter on my episode on RBN recently, and people can find it in the RBN archives on the Gnostic Media website. But the the letter I found at Princeton was a letter from Ernest Hemingway that actually suggested, almost demanded, Ezra Pound's lockup. And so that changes the whole story. But Ezra Pound was at this same hospital. And of course, we also see John Hinckley Jr., that attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan at that same hospital. So again, more ties here. Basically, what you're looking at when you're looking at the brain database is the intelligence community. And I should state, if I haven't said it enough before, that there
and the media,
is,
and the media.
well, and
Yeah.
and the media. But one thing I want to state, though, hold on. One thing I want to state here is that there is no difference between the occult community, or between the occult and the intelligence community. They are essentially one and the same.
Sure. Um, they use the occult as simply a way to mentally debase people. If you look at, we're talking about Emanuel Swedenborg. I mean, he basically took mysticism to a larger group of people than anyone other than, Aleister Crowley, for example, who's another basically individual inside the organization. And so when you see powerful cultural shapers that are pushing people to irrationality, it's a really good time to go to the brain and check out all of the associated connections. Because
Well, or study the trivium method for that
well, of
matter,
course,
because that's
that's always important. Because, I mean, for example, you have Aleister Crowley, but then uh, on one side, but then you have H.G. Wells and Orson Welles on the other, where suddenly you have this Martian invasion being used as basically as a way to intimidate and terrify the population. And from this, of course, you get the UFO phenomenon, which is just another piece of the dream to make people unable to think clearly. But it's coming from the same point. If you trace back Wells, you get into military intelligence. If you chase back the UFO phenomenon in the 50s, it goes right into
uh,
the same true.
well, and it goes right into the Huxleys and H.G. Wells and Orwell. And so I
So,
do, I just did this episode. It's released on October 30th, which was the 77th anniversary of the War of the Worlds. And I recommend that everyone please watch this episode with Dr. Hans Utter and I, because we do expose how the War of the Worlds was a prototype of them, using media to manipulate the public.
right, exactly right, and
And for creating the type of now with Syria and all of this.
exactly. I mean, what they were doing is learning to what extent the public could be controlled vis-a-vis mass media. That was what Wells was doing, and they found out that they could create a broad-based panic just by telling people things which, of course, were clearly impossible and untrue. But that was, they took the authority of the radio, and really what they were testing was the authority of the media itself. If you look at the work that was done during World War II by the anthropologists, what they found, and these were, of course, the whole science of anthropology was under the control of military intelligence during World War II. So, like Gregory Bateson, who then went on to create the CIA, was developing science that would eventually get used against the populations in America and Europe. Um,
Well, and we should mention, Joe, that and he was even good friends with our friend Jay Fikes, and he was essentially using Fikes. Fikes had no idea about this
no
stuff.
question, and he was also turning on supposedly these cultural influencers like the Grateful Dead and Ken Kesey.
Absolutely right. He was right in the middle of all of that.
Right. So, and of course, he is right in the center of MK Ultra. He's working at the Palo Alto VA, which was basically one of the headquarters, and so you don't have any way that he can escape. But the scrutiny and the truth of all this. But he was developing ideas on how to control population. And this is why some of the letters that are presented at the Post Flaviana website, the Caesar Messiah website, and the Gnostic Media website referencing Bateson are so important. He's another, like Crowley and Swedenborg, he's another centerpiece. He's another person who had really powerful influence throughout behavioral science and directly controlling the CIA. And so,
Who else he dosed was Allen Ginsberg, and of course, Allen Ginsberg was heading up the Greenwich Village team in New York of MK Ultra, and then he went on to found the Naropa Institute, where the Dalai Lama, etc., works. Of course, the Dalai Lama has been CIA for about 4 or 5 decades at least.
well, they're able to use someone like that as a way to move people into mysticism.
Absolutely,
I,
and the Dalai Lama is just wow. Well, I don't want to get sued, but he's the Tibetan religion is an ancient system of mind control, just like any of the others, just like we've exposed with Christianity and the New Age and the psychedelic movement and so many others. And it's also embedded probably in more pedophilia than Catholicism or Judaism. And of course, the Jewish Talmud states right there that it's okay for Jews to have sex with little girls as long as they're 3 years and a day old.
um, actually, that quote is to some extent the language is a little cryptic, but it certainly is possible to interpret it in that
Well,
way.
there I actually have at least three similar
Yeah,
quotes from the
yeah, no,
Talmud, all saying the same
doubt. I mean,
thing.
I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just saying that the language in the Talmud is particularly in these kinds of areas is deliberately cryptic in my opinion, and it's they can wink in and out depending on how you want to interpret the phrase. But anyway, so the we can show the movement that is debasing culture as it emerges from World War II, as it moves into the counterculture, which is obviously using Huxley as one of its progenitors, and then understanding the expression "Brave New World," how Huxley is using it, you can see really that there isn't much doubt where the government is controlling media. They have developed anthropologic science, weaponized anthropology, and they're using it against the public. And so this is really kind of the bedrock truth that citizens need to know, and to understand why their lives are so miserable in general, is because the government does not want us to be successful and healthy and have good relationships and families and ethnic pride and ethnic strength. Everything that could possibly be something that would cause a group to be able to stand up against the force of the dream that these people are putting up on top of us, has been studied and has been determined how to tear it apart. Just to, as an aside, Gloria Steinem is a CIA agent. She was outed. Ms. Magazine was outed as receiving fundings from CIA sources. Ms. Magazine brings out a story on the terrible nature of the Black male. The article is written under very mysterious circumstances. The author apparently is Black, but it's never been completely verified who actually wrote the thing. But at the same time, you have the Great Society programs being implemented, right? So Ms. Magazine creates a kind of defense as to why the structure of the welfare program was designed to break up the Black family, right? In the Great Societies program, singles mothers receive more money than married mothers, right? And if you look at the statistics of Black America, you'll see that from the Civil War to the beginning of the Great Society programs, they were narrowing every positive demographic feature right up to the point where you have the Great Society programs start. And from there, every single demographic, single moms, out of wedlock births, drug use, violence, everything simply collapses, right? So this isn't circumstance. This is a plan. And Ms. Magazine, once it's outed, once it's looked at in the right context, in the context that Jan can show through the brain, well, look, folks, the media gives an excuse for the activity of government. We have to start suspecting both of them. We have to stop believing mainstream media, start using our own capacity for reason. And again, the trivium obviously would be something people would want to study, formal logic, so that they can defend themselves, and then try to create political change with this information. So there it is. It's an ugly picture, and it's a dangerous one, because the group obviously has to basically, since I think it's coming clear that this organization exists, they're going to have to act more dramatically. I think you can expect, as new media rises up, as more networks like the one we're on, as more shows as like the one Jans have been doing appear, you're going to see the organization ratchet up control over it and try
Well,
to.
sure, and not only that, but what we see also is a what are these? What's the name of them when? Oh boy, agent provocateurs, and so we'll see podcasts. And recently there was a murder in Colorado Springs, where this guy had cited the work of the gunman. He,
Right,
he killed he killed 4 people in Colorado Springs. He cited the work of a guy by the name of Mark Passio.
Yeah.
And so this could be looked at, as a possible caveat, agent provocateur who, uh, is leading people to such conclusions. And then we also saw other fans of this same guy on the Alex Jones forums suggesting people go out and murder cops. And
Right.
so when we look at all of this, that they're out there trying to create all of this to shut down alternative media.
Well, they want to create a format that makes martial law acceptable.
Right, and they want to just totally get rid of freedom of speech,
Right.
and
And
and,
so
and the
they'll,
internet has always stood as the largest area of free speech, and it's their biggest issue, because while they can use it to spy on us, we use it to inform each other.
right, exactly, exactly right, Jan. And so what we can expect are lunatics to come forward and do unimaginable and unspeakable acts, and then as they are describing what led them to it, they're going to cite the media personalities of who are bringing the truth to the public. They're saying, "Look, this is where my the craziness and the violence came from." I think you can expect
Either
that.
that, or they'll cite an agent provocateur, and they'll pretend that there's someone that's,
Right. But I mean, in any case, the public is going to need to be very careful about what techniques that there's a guy who is sort of the head propagandist for the Bush administration, and now he works for Obama, named
you're
Cass.
talking. Oh yeah, Nudge, that guy.
Right. And Cass Sunstein is actually saying, we should get rid of the First Amendment or dramatically modify it, because he's afraid that conspiracy theorists will make democracy unfunctionable. Right. So you can
Well,
see that.
and of course, we're talking about Edward Bernays' view of democracy from
Well,
the first
exactly.
page of his book.
Exactly, but you can see that he wouldn't make such a dramatic statement, and these statements of people like this are well vetted. They know exactly what they're doing when they make them. They've been approved. He's trying to put into the
He's
public the
trying to nudge people
he's
the
trying to
direction.
convince people that this is an okay thing to talk about, that getting rid of the First Amendment and freedom of speech is not a bad idea, because those crazy conspiracy theorists
Absolutely.
are really going to cause some trouble for democracy. The reason, though, that Sunstein is making such comments is because their power to produce the dream is dwindling.
Yes,
If you look at the statistics, you'll see that networks like CNN, Fox News, Bloomberg, they're dying, right?
absolutely.
And they're
Well,
and
let me just read this quote, Joe. From this is from page 1 of Edward Bernays' book Propaganda, and of course, he's using propaganda and spin to sell this. So
all
he
right,
says the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Wink, wink. And no, note it, Democrat demo means mob, so it's a mobocracy. It's control of the mob. Those, and it's not a republic. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. In other words, to keep them on the top, and what they do is they spend billions or trillions every year to keep everyone else dumbed down. If people were naturally that stupid, they wouldn't need the effort and the money and the resources to dumb us down.
exactly.
And so the vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind.
Right. And Bernays, of course, tries to, make this with a smiley face, that he's not really,
Wink,
um,
wink.
causing, the genocide. But just bear in mind that Bernays, one of his first jobs was the War is Good propaganda office to make World War I palatable to the United States citizens, so that young men would walk into automatic weapon fire and the oligarchs could get the population reduction that they wanted. Bernays came up with a poster of a gorilla in a German military outfit holding a blonde woman. This was the rational structure by which the American people then could like get rid of their isolationists, their rational isolationists, and start look at it carefully. Yeah, there it is, right? There's Bernays, destroy the mad brute. So, this is, you can see Bernays at work here. You can see the military intelligence, the weaponized anthropology coming right at the citizen. Bernays was hired by President Wilson to produce this material. He
Oh,
worked
well, let's not forget, Joe, really quickly, that Bernays also worked with Gordon Wasson for 10 years
exactly,
at least.
exactly right, exactly right. And of course, don't also forget that Bernays was the double nephew of this
Sigmund
bizarrely inbred family
Freud.
that produced Sigmund Freud. That what Bernays is actually representing is Freud's philosophy, except in a culture rather than with individuals. And let me tell you something. Anyone who looks at this material, the material in the brain and articles you and I have written, and permits themselves to go to a psychoanalytic for therapy,
Well,
have their
Joe, did you notice let me just share this on the screen really quickly again. Did you notice, and I noticed it right when you said the word, look at what's written on the club right there. It says culture.
yeah, right. So there it is. There that's what they want to destroy. And they want to
In your
destroy
face.
culture. And it's sort of like, it's this is um what we're up against is an organization that uh, basically wants to destroy European culture, and has,
Absolutely.
and has. Okay, so this is really the goal. They infest the media, the political world, and the military intelligence. They just control these areas. So what happened is a very small minority recognized that the only way they could ever get the power that they needed, was to take political power. So this is one of the reasons why I've been saying that every political leader in Europe and in the United States, and every financier of any power, and every media individual needs to have DNA testing. We need to have this entire collection, this whole arena of individuals tested, so we can see their ethnicity and we can see their family connection. Because I think if we do that, what you're going to see is that the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and all of the media moguls that are influencing culture have a relationship, a genetic relationship that they haven't disclosed. And I'll just point out that Madonna, who was the progenitor of the whore of Babylon, Miley Cyrus, and an obvious cultural polluter, she now travels with a DNA cleanup crew, right? She travels with people who make sure that none of her DNA is left behind. And I'm betting that this is going to become commonplace, because they really know that simply having DNA taken from a few dozen key individuals who claim that there is no relationship between them, but can be exposed by DNA testing, and then having the information posted on the website. I mean, this could bring the whole house of cards down, because people would then realize, wait a second, this isn't history unfolding. This isn't some kind of real struggle that's going on in World War I or World War II. This is just population reduction. This is just eugenics by controlling the political structures and then ramming the armies into one another to get the kind of population reduction they wanted. Look at the behavior of Eisenhower at the end of World War II. Look at his treatment of the German prisoner of wars. Look at Churchill's
Well, he
behavior.
killed about 1.5 million Germans in the
Exactly
camps
right.
after the
And look
wars.
at the civilians that Churchill wiped out. These weren't acts of some kind of military strategy. This is just the population reduction that goes on when you've got a population that is no longer able to resist. And so that's, Churchill, Eisenhower, FDR, their relatives still exist. They need to be tested. We need to know who these people were that actually just genocided such a large fraction of European population. And so these are practical steps. These are real steps that can be taken. And I would hope that if you look into the brain that Jan has set up, you'll get very good information as about who you should start getting testing of. Yeah.
All right. So, and we're just about finished here. We've got about 5 minutes left. So we should probably start wrapping things up. Any specific points that you want to cover other than, let's see, of course we need donations, folks. And also, go to Joe's Post Flaviana website and my Gnostic Media website, and you can donate
Right.
directly
And
on the
support this
website
network. And support this network.
and support the network. We need
Absolutely.
donations as well as the network needs support. So please
Exactly.
support
Because
all of us. The network doesn't pay us, and they're doing this on their
right.
hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears, etc. But
Right.
we also need
And
donations.
this is how, if people are intimidated, they know the truth, but they don't know how to go out into the
And buy Joe's books.
right. You can buy my books, which I think will give you a good understanding of sort of the foundation of some of this. But moreover, support the network. Support the network, because when you do this, you are basically creating the venue that can free your mind. So Jan and I sometimes are sort of like maybe too much of a mutual admiration society, but I really want to strongly support Gnostic Media website. I think it's really, really an important one, and obviously make donations when you go there if you can. Support this network, because even if you can't get into the public, you can support a network that does. And I just want to say one final thing. Look, if you are inspired, if you look at this information and you go, "This looks correct," then one thing you can do is simply get a coffee table and go into an area that the public, is participating in, and try to create dialogue. Just try to break the intimidation of not being able to talk about, question things like 9/11, the Holocaust, the foreign policy, the basis of the foreign policy. I mean, just get into the public and make the ideas possible to discuss. Get
And
rid.
if Ursula Hurbeck can stand up at 87 years old and tell the truth on German television, facing prison, and that was in Germany, and she woke up millions of people. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go into a coffee shop and speak to a
Well,
handful of people.
here's
Ursula is a hero and has stood up against all odds against this madness.
yeah. And so what you want to do is get your coffee table, get into the public area, and just invite discussion. You simply need to start the process by which the public will have a higher quality of democracy, because there'll be ideas that they can actually, they won't be afraid to discuss.
Well, it looks like Joe's just about to have a really nice dinner back there, and
Actually, in back of me is my wife's ceramic collection.
oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She as a ceramicist, and at this time of year, she puts them on display and gives them as gifts, primarily charity donations. But she also sells a few to people, and so that's what's going on in back of me.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've only got a few seconds left here. I don't know what.
Yeah. thank you very much for everyone for
Well,
listening.
it's not 6 yet, so we might have about 20 seconds.
Okay, well, I wanted to thank everyone for listening and to let them know that next week we're going to be right back at it. So please remember that and schedule this time in your week to listen to us. And we're going to have really new and explosive information as we go forward.
Indeed, and I agree. And again, everyone, thanks for your support. Thanks for supporting the network and for supporting each of our individual sites and work as well. We can't do it without you. And we're entirely listener supported. We don't take any funds from any other organizations or anything. It's strictly public funding.
Hey, I got
Thanks so
a hey, thank everyone. And here's an idea: power to the people.
Thanks.
How about that one?
Take
Yeah.
care, everyone. There you
Yeah.
go.
See you guys. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye bye.
The pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world should be the focus of every person on our planet. The reason it is not is because people are kept distracted by the illusions and deceit propagated by the corporately controlled mainstream media. In recent years, the rise in truly informed, savvy researchers and journalists who have all taken to the air in various capacities has given rise to a new genre of media. We have seen the explosion of truly free and independent media, and thus the need to create an ethical live broadcast network that facilitated these brave and tireless souls became apparent. With a great amount of research and meticulous planning, Conscious Consumer Network was created. CCN is a first-of-its-kind broadcast network that is specifically dedicated to free and independent media with absolutely no government control, corporate sponsorship, or advertising. The live broadcast network runs full-time with an average of 25 shows and live broadcasts a week. The high-definition live stream is free to view and is accessible from any computer terminal with online access, including laptops, tablets, smartphones, and smart TVs. All shows are archived onto YouTube and are freely available to view in order to educate and inform as many as we can without imposing monetary limitations. CCN was successfully launched on the 1st of January 2015 and has gone from strength to strength as we have improved and increased the capacities and functionalities of the network, as well as an ever-rotating and improving lineup of content which is broadcast daily. CCN is blessed to be the home of some of the hardest hitting, most cutting edge, truly educational and informative materials. Catch interviews, reviews, and talk shows from the many different and beautiful perspectives from CCN's family of interviewers and broadcasters. Since the 1st of January 2015, we have produced over 800 shows. We have over 2 million YouTube minutes watched every month, and we have an average of 1 million hits a day on CCN's website. CCN is viewed in over 147 different countries and hosts broadcasters from 5 different continents. The time has now come to generate funding to keep CCN on the air for the duration of 2016. The total sum needed to continue broadcasting for 2016 is $60,000. This budget includes the replacement of computer equipment, the acquisition of secure servers, which are most needed as we keep getting hacked, plus the renewal of the broadcast license fee for 2016. This is a fraction of the annual budget used by mainstream media networks producing a similar quantity of content. This is what makes CCN so successful, unique, and accessible, is the ability to run a project of this size and reach on such minimal resources. CCN does not claim ownership over any of the material we produce and broadcast, as we firmly believe that information is the common heritage of all beings, and thus CCN belongs to you, the public, and it is up to you all to keep CCN going. CCN would like to thank those who have contributed to the network in the past with resources, content, information, time, and energy. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.